Well, welcome, Federico Trost, to the Twin Cities virtually. We're thrilled for you to join us this morning or evening your time and share with us your amazing wines. We are great fans of Poggio Antico, have been for a long time, and are really, really excited for this opportunity. So I appreciate your time so much.
You're more than welcome. I appreciate yours.
I would encourage everyone as we get started to pour themselves a glass of the 2018 Rosso di Montalcino. I will tell you that you have a lot of fans in this area. There are at least 3 people or 3 couples joining us tonight who have visited your winery and are so excited to taste these wines with you because they really, they have a personal relationship with Poggio Antico. And you have 3 new fans because I served 3 bottles of the 2013 Brunello to a party in our private dining room last night, and they really loved it. And so you have a lot of fans in Minneapolis, St. Paul that you may not be.
We're lucky to have a lot of American visitors in Montalcino in general, but especially here at Poggio Antico in normal times, and we hope to go back to normal life quite soon. We used to host 10,000 visitors, mainly Americans. So we always say we love America because thank you guys for coming. And it's true that anytime I go to the US for a tasting or something, I always have the opportunity and the chance to meet somebody who actually visited our winery. So yeah, we have quite a few followers there. We can count on like 30,000 entry in our database. We do a lot of e-blast, emails, newsletters. So we always touch base with all of them, kind of.
30,000 is 30,000 1% of the population of America, or 1/10 of 1%? Anyway, it's a large number.
Yeah.
But you have at least 6 people will be on this tasting tonight with us that have visited you in person. So to start, tell us a little bit about the history of Poggio Antico, how it's arrived at where it is today. I know there have been some pretty significant changes in the last 5 years or so. So could you talk a little bit about historically Poggio Antico?
Yeah, Poggio Antico was founded in 1976, so it's 45 years ago, and it's quite something, because actually Montalcino as a wine appellation, actually as a wine region, wine destination, really started, in the 80s. So if we, of course, do not count Biondi Santi, who probably started like 150 years ago. So the rest of the wineries, now there are around 260 producers. But back then, 45 years ago, of course, the number was a little bit more limited. And Poggio Antico was among those founders of the new era of Brunello di Montalcino. With the previous owner, of course, Poggio Antico became quite famous and renowned, especially in the United States. This was due to the fact that they of course, brought some innovative processes in the winemaking, which is quite normal now, but back then, like 45, 50 years ago, it was not so in this area. It used to be a little bit poorer than it is now, of course. And so they brought new ideas, new way of trading the wines as well. And the results came immediately, and that's why we started very well with the vintage 1985, which was ranked in the top 100 Wine Spectator at number 4, and actually was the first Tuscan winery to be there. I think that only Gaia got there the year before. So this is why actually we still have a lot of followers in the United States, because it started very well from the very beginning. And even a few years ago, for instance, President Obama, when he had to give a birthday gift to the Speaker of the House, which was Mr. Bonner back then, he actually gave him a bottle of our Brunello Altero as a present. So it means that we are quite well established in the American market, the reason why is that, as I said, we started 45 years ago. We put a lot of care, special care in the vineyards, because of course the good wine is always made in the vineyard. We've always been, the ones who renovated the vineyards even back then, and even in the cellar we always had new tanks for the fermentation, and also we changed all the casks, and that of course helped, together with the fact that we're maniac for what it means, cleaning the environments, and especially putting a lot of care in the grapes, starting of course from tending the vines to especially the selection, the moment of the selection after the green harvest, of course during the harvest. So we've always had 2 sorting tables, even back then with the previous owner, 15 people sorting berry by berry, and actually this process is for all the wines that we make, not just for the top selection or for the Riserva, but for the Rosso di Montalcino, for the Super Tuscans, and of course for our top Brunellos. And that's why quality pays. Actually, quality always pays back. And 4 years ago, in 2017, Poggio Antico changed hands, and I came on board as well with the new owner. And from then, we also started, trying to elevate, if possible, the quality of our wines once again, starting from the soil. We conducted 2 soil surveys. And in order to understand the potential of each and every inch of our terroir, and then after collecting all the data, of course we crossed those analytical data with Claudio, who was born. Claudio is the vineyard manager, who was born in this very house here in Poggio Antico, and has been with the winery ever since, practically. So he made more than 50 vineyards here, so he knows very well. So we always try to be innovative, but also always keeping in mind the tradition, because it is very important. That's why the team, especially in the vineyards, has always been the same. Kind of course, the people and the staff, our colleagues, are always the same persons. They know very well every part of our estate. And the other big plus is that actually Poggio Antico has all the vineyards very close to the winery. So we do not have to cross the borders or the perimeter of our estate to pick the berries, for instance, during the harvest. So it enables a quick processing, which is a big plus, especially when the weather is quite warm, in September or the end of September. So from when we came on board, actually, after conducting this 2 soils analysis, we also had to set up the process in a different way. So now we are approaching the philosophy of the plot by plot, or as I prefer to define it, we have a sort of micro terroir philosophy. So every hectare, which is around like 2 acres, is first of all identified and then harvested separately, and of course also fermented separately. So and also aged after the fermentation separately. And to do that, of course, we had to invest also in the cellar. We bought an optical sorter now. So the first part of the sorting is made manually, as always, with 4 people of the team. But then, of course, this machine gives us the chance not only to select the perfect berries, because it's based on a 3-camera technology, you know, one to exclude the bodies that you don't want to have in the wine, like, you know, leaves, or little insects, ladybugs, and so on. The other one actually measured and checks, more than measure the shape of the berry, because if it is not perfect, it means that it's been beaten. So it means that there might be fermentation already that you don't want to have, of course, at the first stage of this sorting. And then the third one can measure the level of the ripening according to the color of the berry. Whatever doesn't fit with our parameters that you set up, of course, there's a computer and we set up the parameters very, very strictly. It is expelled from the line. So we lose a lot of production. That's why our yeast is very low in general, in the vineyard first, and then after this process of sorting and selection even more. So this is why we are very boutique, I would say. We pay full attention to each and every detail, and the berries that actually finally get to be fermented are definitely perfect. And again, let me tell you once again that this is for all of our wines, not just the top selection. And you know, all the wines that we have are just different expression of the micro terroir or the micro terroir, and of course some wines like the Rosso di Montalcino that we will taste first. It is blended in order to express finesse, balance, and the fact that it can be drank a little earlier compared to the other batches of Sangiovese still, because the Brunello is made of Sangiovese as the Rosso di Montalcino, that has different characteristics, more tannins, a little bit more acidity, and so these batches actually take more time to age in order to be bottled and then of course to be put into the market. But the process, the love and the attention that we put at every stage of the season, you know, starting from now until the fermentation and the blending is exactly the same. And this is very important. We do not have second lines. We do not consider Rosso di Montalcino like a little brother of the. For us, every wine has its own dignity, and it's the pure expression of what we do. And in addition to that, we don't even bottle all the wine that we finally produce, even after, you know, these very low yields that I mentioned before, because we go through exhausting time tasting session, and we're very strict at selecting only the very top batches, the very best batches that we can for, again, once again, all of our wines, not just the top Brunello or Reserva.
Well, my high regard for President Obama is only increased by knowing that he has such excellent taste in wine. Because obviously,
it's true. It's definitely true. I can't tell you.
He obviously could have picked any wine in the world to give as a gift, and Alzero was certainly I mean, it's not the most obvious thing, you know. It's not just it's not a famous Napa Valley Cabernet or, you know, first growth Bordeaux or something. That takes some effort to actually try to, you know, select something very special, not just very famous. You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that other than Biondi Santi, Brunello really became a thing in the 60s. Italy is obviously one of the oldest winemaking countries in the world. I mean, you think it has a you know, a history that goes back a long time. But really, if you think about it, in Tuscany and in Piedmont, this modern day of great wines began in the 50s and 60s. I mean, Angelo Gaia.
Even at the beginning of the 80s, actually, because that's when we date, you know, the so-called Italian wine renaissance, you know, because of course, as you said, as you pointed out, we've always been making wines in Italy ever since, you know, ever since the Greek colonies and, you know, and the Romans. So we're talking about possibly 2,500 years at least, close to 3,000. But, you know, the real modern winemaking actually started, you know, more or less in the close to the Napa Valley phenomenon, you know, like in the, let's say in the 70s. I would say that, you know, even if we have a lot more history than you guys do there in California, let's say that the real thing actually started together for us and for you, you know. It's kind of strange to say that, you know, but I mean, the modern way of trading the wines, the modern way of making the wines, and, you know, and be in the international markets and traveling, you know, and presenting the wine in English, or that's very modern for us as well, you know. But,
you know, it's so interesting that you mentioned. I was just thinking exactly the same thing. That I mean, I was getting ready to say this before you said it. When you said that one of the things you hear about California wine, or, you know, West Coast wine, is that how, you know, that California is just trying to catch up because they've only been making wine for a so much shorter period of time than European wineries. So how could you expect wineries in the Napa Valley to make wines equal to those in Europe? But the truth is that it all happened about the same time. You know, Sassicaia first vintage was 51. Gaia's first vintage was, Angelo's was 61. And then Robert Mondavi came along in 66 and changed everything in Napa. A lot of that was marketing, as you said, traveling. I mean, a lot of Robert Mondavi's success was, he was a brilliant marketer. And you know, he also made great wines, but he was brilliant at marketing. So your point is absolutely accurate, that this phenomenon of modern winemaking is kind of occurred simultaneously.
yeah, and it actually includes all these things, you know. Of course, the technical factors, you know, the improving of technology, of studying, you know, going to the university to study viticulture compared to like 50 years ago. Nobody did that, you know. Everybody made wines, and also marketing and traveling. So it all comes together, I think. And he made this wine region, especially Tuscany, of course, and Piedmont as well, but Tuscany possibly even more famous worldwide, you know, because we could count, of course, here in Tuscany on a long history for what it means tourism, from the Brits first, you know, and then the Americans as well. They dating back like the 1800. So you know, the Brits and the Americans always came here. So, you know, they know about Tuscany, even if not exactly sometimes, but they know the name, and that's a big plus. So we have this marketing thing already, but then we also had to you know, make it go together with the wine industry, and it happened. You know, it happened. Let's say in this 60s, but especially 70s, late 70s, and here we also have to say a big thank you, of course, to Bjorn Sandy, who was the founder, let's say, of the quality Brunello making, but also to another friend of ours, of course, which is Banfi, who is still is owned by an American family, Italian American, but still American family. And actually, that's how it happened that the Brunello could find a market in the United States, especially. So it was practically built by Americans in a certain. I mean, don't get me wrong, but of course, Americans helped a lot through the Mariani family, again Italian American, but American, and then of course here you find a lot of local producers, but Montalcino is kind of international. First of all, a lot of owners from northern Italy or from Rome, so not necessarily from the village. And now, of course, there are a lot of foreign proprietors, including Poggio Antico now. In the past 30 years, it was owned by a family from the north of Italy, and now it's owned by a Dutch guy. So together with us, now they say that 1/3 of the states actually are owned by foreigners, and this is a good thing, because it's you always have the local people, but you also have new ideas coming from other parts of Italy first, and then of Europe, and then possibly the world. So it's a good thing in order to compete with the international market, because the wine industry is a lot of poetry. Yeah, we can talk about that, but it's also hard work and innovation together with tradition, always, as I said, a lot of traveling, a lot of contacts, a lot of relationships. Thank God in this industry, relationship still count a lot, which is a fantastic thing. And this is why people like Gaia, was very successful, because he really knew everybody. He traveled the world constantly, and this is what we all do now. So and in our case, at least, we can always have all those visitors coming to us. It's a great thing, not only because now, of course, in COVID time, it gave us the opportunity to keep on selling a lot, practically even more than before, to our private customers, but it also gives us the opportunity, to let them dream about Tuscany, the wines. Once you come here, you will cherish this memory forever. We receive a lot of emails, or not, now it's not emails, it's like Instagram posts, of course, or stories. Things have changed a little bit, of people celebrating their 10th anniversary, because actually they came here for their honeymoon, so we have this special relationship with all of our customers, and which are friends. I always call them Poggio Antico friends, not clients or private customers, and it's something unique. Poggio Antico has always been focused on that. In Italy, people are starting to focus more on the so-called D2C business now. Because of the COVID, or the pandemics, and so on. We've always been like this. So we've always been open to visitors every day, 365 days a year. So only the pandemic stopped us for a little bit, and we really look forward to hosting and showing around again all the visitors that usually come here. So because it's fantastic, you share an experience. You can show them what you do. You can of course talk about the wines, but you can also, sometimes you don't even have to talk, when you just look at the views that we have here, which are amazing, because we are, I would say, the most elevated, the highest producer in terms of elevation, on average at least, of the appellation. And this is why Poggio Antico is also unique. So we may not be as powerful as some other Brunellos, but our elegance is very unique, really unique, because it's due to the elevation that we have, to the fact that the exposure of our vineyards is perfect. Now, of course, with the global warming, it's becoming a little bit easier for also for us to have bolder wines, even if it's not our style even now. But compared to the people in the lower parts of Montalcino, it's a very, very different style. So once you become a Poggio Antico friend, you really, you really, spread the word forever, forever. And our Poggio Antico friends actually, and you will. And I want to say hello to them, those who will take part to the tasting tonight with you. Actually, I can tell you that it is really so. Once you become a fan of Poggio Antico, you'll be a fan forever, and we'll be, of course, always in contact and in touch with them. This is the real plus for us. I think this is what makes also Poggio Antico different and unique compared to the others. So it's the terroir, of course, the elevation, the fact that we've always been, we always put a lot of attention in little details, insignificant details for us are very important because that's the only place you can make the difference in details. Otherwise everybody makes good wines now. Compared to 40 years ago, it's a lot more difficult because here in Montalcino the quality has increased dramatically. It's a good thing because it's a positive competition. Everybody wants to do better, and everybody grew together, as one, as a wine appellation. So it's becoming more and more difficult to make the difference. So the only place where you can make the difference is little, almost insignificant details, because
that's another way in which Niccolo Incisa della Rocchetta at Sassicaia and Angelo Gaia changed Italian winemaking. I mean, we had a tasting last week with a very well-known producer of Valpolicella and Amarone, and the owner of this winery agreed with me. I've been tasting wine professionally for about almost 50 years. When I first started doing this, Valpolicella, I mean, it was awful. It was awful, and it was insipid and watery and thin. And there was no such thing as excellent Valpolicella in the mid 70s. It just, it was the word was famous, but the wines were just abysmal.
It was more about volumes than quality, of course. And the average per capita consumption here was unbelievable. If you know how much people drank on average, more than 100 liters a year. It's I do my best even now to keep the average at a certain point. I do for sure. But now I think it dropped to 35 now. They say 38, but and we're Italy, the classic country for wine, So,
but Niccolo at Sassicaia and Angelo in Piedmont said, "I'm going to make great wine. I'm going to make wines that are the equal of any wines in the world, and I hope you'll come along with me." That's what they said that to their peers. I hope you'll join me in this effort, and it changed everything. The improvement in improvement in quality in the average Italian wine over the time that I've been tasting wine professionally is extraordinary. It's really extraordinary.
Yeah.
There were
giant leap in just, a decade, I would say. And, in Italy, you can always find still, of course, the wine and culture, sort of food and wine culture, they go together. For foreigners, sometimes it's not the same thing, but for us, the table has always been like this: food, homemade, genuine food, and of course, wine. But wine was really an ingredient of it was part of the diet actually. So, people who worked in the field had, a piece of cheese, a piece of bread, and a liter of wine. And of course, the wine was a little watery. Otherwise, of course, by volume, it was like 10, even not even 10, but it was really, something that you drank for calories, that's all. And just in a decade, actually, still keeping this food and wine culture, but the role of the wine actually changed it, and it became a companion, for your culinary preparation. And it happened just, in a while. What are you tasting? Can I join you? Because I have all the wines here.
Let's talk about the Rosso di Montalcino.
So, can you see it? Okay. I have it here. I have the Rosso di Montalcino. So first of all, it's Sangiovese 100%, and it comes exactly, we mainly have Sangiovese here. We have 33 hectares in total, and we have 31 hectares planted as Sangiovese. So our production of Rosso di Montalcino is very low, even compared to our Brunello, because actually we practically produce only Brunello, and what we declass becomes Rosso di Montalcino. So practically is a Brunello itself that could become Brunello, but during our testing session, we pick the batches that has more elegance, that are more ready to drink and juicier, and we declass them, and we release them a little earlier. So this is the Rosso di Montalcino for us. Which is very important because it's really good stuff. It's a great wine. Sometimes Rosso di Montalcino doesn't even have that reputation or the appeal, that of course Brunello has, which is good and fine. But sometimes, if you're having a sandwich or a burger, or, for lunch, you just have a glass of wine. Rosso di Montalcino is perfect. It doesn't mean though that you cannot have a proper dinner with it, with a steak and with heavier preparations, because it's a great wine. It's not just a baby Brunello. It's and in our case, of course, the aromas are very delicate, but they are there. So they're not as intense as some others, because we, of course, focus more on elegance and finesse. But if you put your nose in the glass, you will really appreciate all these little nuances of Sangiovese coming out of the glass, which are mainly, floral still, because you still have that violet that is classic, together with those little berry fruits, so this is what you have at the first impact, and then putting your nose in it, you can have a huge variety of all the red berry fruits, from plums and everything. You don't usually have at this stage of the evolution, like tertiary aromas, like tobacco and so on. But of course, if you keep your Rosso di Montalcino for a few years, it also ages very well. Please don't do that. Just open the bottle, drink it, and then come back to me and order more. But I can tell you that if it happens that you lose, let's say, a bottle in your pantry or in a part of your cellar, and you forget about it, and you will find it, you will find it after a few years, it's going to be a great wine as well. But
so I spent some time on your website this morning preparing for this conversation. And so who writes the suggested food pairings for your wines? Who does that?
Well, it's a teamwork, actually.
Well, do you know that that the website says that what you suggest that you eat with this rosso di Montalcino is fried chicken or fried cod sandwich.
Yeah, that was also, because we try to give recommendations that people can really enjoy sometimes, and actually our audience is mainly American, so it could be interesting. Of course, it goes without saying that you can have our rosso di Montalcino, where the local pasta, which is called pinci here in Montalcino, with ragu, with wild boar ragu, which is what I usually do. But I think it's a little easier to find fried chicken in the United States rather than a very good wild boar ragu hunted by the hunters of Poggio Antico.
Anything's good with fried chicken. It's like if it's good fried chicken, but
it's because of the acidity and the freshness, of course, it cleanses the palate very well, and so possibly sometimes we
your suggestion for the next one.
But on the back label, actually, we say that. Let me read it. No. Just say that it's a natural companion to fine foods in this case.
Your suggestion for the next one, the Madre, is grilled asparagus, and if you
on
the website, if you asked me to list 100 things that I would pair with the Madre, grilled asparagus would not be one of them. But we in that conversation last week,
actually, Madre is the only place of the state where you can find wild asparagus.
Well, maybe that.
I just went there last week, but I haven't been quite lucky. I just, just for a little risotto. But that's the only place. Maybe it's a good matching because that's the only place you can find it. In the close to the Vineyard Madre.
Well, then it might make sense. But I mean, in our conversation with that Amarone winemaker last week, he said he thought the best pairing food for his Amarone was raw prawns with olive oil and salt.
Oh, really? Wow, that's
with Amarone.
That's
yeah, and I would.
A little risky, but
I mean, I don't know that I.
Or even asparagus, we usually blend it. We usually have it with some white wines rather than.
Yeah.
At least these days, but it's true that back in the days, red wine was the wine for all our fathers and grandfathers. So they matched everything with red wine. So now we call it, pairing, traditional pairing, rather than the technical one. But I think that you're right. I mean, sometimes what was good, back in the days, it was good for a reason. So they did lose a lot of time, examining the food and the components, and then putting points on all the things, and then they match it together. So I have to say that I never tried wild asparagus with Madre, but I will. Thank you for recommending this pairing.
That's what it says on your website. So another way that I think another reason that wine quality improved with winemakers maybe a generation older than you is that previous to that, mostly wineries, the son took over for the father, and he did the same thing that the father did, or the grandfather did, or the great grandfather did. There was very little innovation. There was very little thought about international style. There was very little thought about trying to make better wine. But then maybe a generation older than you, young winemakers started traveling and going to California and Australia and Austria and all over all New Zealand, all over the world, to see what are they doing in the Barossa Valley, what are they doing in Napa, what are they doing in Willamette Valley in Oregon, and how can I bring that home and improve the quality of what we do in wherever. And that's something that hadn't existed before, but started, that young winemakers or aspiring winemakers were doing internships at wineries.
Right. Yeah. They all go, you know, abroad for an internship. Well, and they bring back a lot of new ideas. But sometimes in Italy, it's a little bit more complicated because, of course, we have tradition, and sometimes there's a sort of generational clash, actually. Sons have to fight against fathers, you know, to bringing new ideas. But at the same time, you also have to keep that in mind that the first cause of bankruptcy in Italy is actually the generational change. So sometimes it's also good to follow your father advice, of course, to keep things going, because as soon as actually the winery or a company, more than a winery, changes hands, and then the new generation takes on the new challenge, actually, you know, it happens that they go bust. That's statistically. So sometimes, you know, it's quite hard here. For sure, you don't have the same problem in the United States, for instance, because there were not many fathers and grandfathers involved in the viticulture before, you know, the sons took over. So it was something new, and so you don't have that fear of innovating, you know. Here it's a balance of powers, you know, between generations, and it's like, you know, when you have a king or something, still the king is there, it reigns, and then when he dies, the new one takes on, and of course takes the matter up and reigns. But these days, actually, we've become a little bit more open-minded, and it's totally true that all the new winemakers, they all go for an internship to New Zealand, to Bordeaux, you know, especially they go there to study as well. But, you know, they go for the harvest wherever, in Barossa Valley, Napa Valley, everywhere, you know, Willamette. So it's fantastic because, of course, they bring something from Italy, but they come back with a lot of new ideas, of course, you know, and you know, because sometimes people do not realize that the word of wine, the wine industry, is a crazy word, you know, because there are so many producers everywhere now. Even here in Montalcino, as I said before, we have 260 producers only here. So we're talking about a village of 2,000 people, and we have 260 wineries. And the rest of Tuscany is possibly the same, and we're still in Tuscany. And then you got 19 other regions, you know. Of course, Veneto, Tuscany, Piedmont, Sicily, Puglia are larger, but, you know, you find producers, tiny producers everywhere. And then, of course, you cross the border and you go to Austria or to Slovenia. I'm not talking about France, which is normal. Everybody knows about France. But when you go to an international wine event, wine fair, you know, you just go there and you see all these booths, you know, people trying to sell their wines from everywhere, you know, from Georgia, not Georgia, of course, in the United States, but in Georgia, where actually the winemaking probably started, you know, as records say. And it's very complicated. Now China is coming, you know, they're investing quite a lot of money. Of course, they're hiring all the top Australian and New Zealand and French and possibly Italian, Americans for sure, winemakers. So it's an evolution. So you know, you have to be open to new ideas and to you know, international taste. So you don't have to lose your identity. We're not selling our soul, of course, to the devil, but you know, our friends, our customers are not the devil. I mean, they're people who want to enjoy the wines, and so, you know, you have to be also a little bit more open for what it means, their palates, you know, because you can't be doing the same things. Like otherwise, we would be like in the 60s. So and and offer you watery wines, bad wines that you didn't like. And now I guess that you enjoy Italian wines a lot more.
So what
And
was,
it's also due to the contribution of people like you and many others, of course, and not also as educated as you can be, but also, you know, the classic consumer, you know, it brought a lot of quality, even to us, where we've been making wines forever, you know. So it's a great thing.
Federico, what was your path? I mean, your accent is not Italian. What was your
It's not
path?
often-
Your accent is not Italian.
uh,
What was your path to becoming the general manager at a really important winery like Poggio Antico?
well, I took economics at school, you know, well, at the university. Before that, at the high school, I took languages. So that's why I've always studied English, French, and Spanish. And, you know, after economics, I fell in love with the word of wine, and I went to a sommelier class, actually, possibly watching on TV a documentary about Sassicaia, you know, if I remember. That was like 15, 20 years ago. So I was watching this TV program, and they said this sommelier helped, you know, the winemaker and of course Incisa della Rocchetta, the owner, to make great wine. So it was like a sort of teamwork all together. And that's how it all started, you know. And it rang the bell, and I decided to do something. You know, I drank wine, of course. I used to do it, but you know, it was a, you know, like a recreational drinking, you know, when you, or as you do in Italy, you know, at home, or and so I went to this sommelier class, and that's where I, you know, had this epiphany, and I said, oh wow, I want to become an expert manager for a winery. I remember the sign like a vision, you know, and so I started applying for a few jobs, you know, and I started in Verona, actually, so selling Amarone in the Verona area. You know, everything you say actually goes back to my personal history and stories that I have to tell you. And you know, I worked in Veneto. I'm from Trieste, which is right on the border of Italy, you know, northeast on the border with the former Yugoslavia. Now it's Slovenia, and which is a tiny wine region. You know, Friuli is a little bit, you know, more renowned, and Veneto, of course, is a lot bigger. So I started there in Verona. And then after traveling a lot, I worked for a few wineries there, including a tiny winery that you might have heard of, which is called Santa Margherita, which is pretty famous in the United States. I used to manage the Canadian market and the Caribbean and Latin America, which is the second largest market, of course, apart from the United States, which is the first, second, and third largest market for them. And then I wanted to do something different, because actually the real great wines come from Tuscany, at least, you know, in the United States. I mean, they look at Tuscany as the perfect place, you know, for holidays and also for drinking wine. So I wanted to try a new challenge, and I moved to Tuscany. So I worked for Brancaia, a very nice boutique winery in the Chianti Classico region, and they also have another winery in Maremma. And after a while, actually, I got this call, and I could not say no to this offer, of course, because becoming the general manager for Poggio Antico is quite a, you know, an opportunity. And so I jumped in, and I found myself here in Montalcino. So it's been 4 years now. My career in the wine industry spans around 15, 16 years, kind of.
Have you ever eaten at a restaurant in Trieste called Suban?
Not really. I took the classes, of course. I became sommelier. I became the responsible of the sommelier of my city and the vice president of the region. but I never worked in a restaurant. I did a lot of events, of course, weddings, because I wanted to learn, especially at the beginning, a lot of wine pouring into events and stuff like that, in Italy as a sommelier, but I never worked actually in the restaurant business.
Well,
I was always, more in the fiscal tax consultancies and that kind of thing, and then
Federico, two of the most memorable meals of my life were in Trieste. One was at Suban, which is up in the hills.
Oh, yeah.
This restaurant
super
up in the hills.
Where 200 years.
They cook everything in over a hearth, over open fire. And when we sat down, I was with someone that they were excited that he was there. And when we sat down, they put a whole white truffle about the size of my fist on the edge of the table. And the first course was crepes with fontina cheese, just kind of warmed in the fireplace with white truffles shaved on top. It's the most simplest dish I've ever eaten in my life. It was one of the greatest things I've ever eaten. And we had a leg of wild boar that they'd cooked on the hearth that they sliced with a Barolo sauce and some more white truffles. This is 30 years ago. I remember it like it was last night. It was so extraordinary. We ate there were four of us. We ate an entire white truffle this big by the time dinner was over. It was absolutely, and just, local pedestrian wines. We didn't even drink Barolo. We just drank, whatever they were pouring. And it was just, I don't think they even had wine glasses. I think we were drinking in water glasses. But the meal was unbelievable. The next day we went to lunch at a restaurant called Marinella. You know that?
Oh my God, that's where my parents got married.
Oh my God.
That's where they had the banquet, of course. So, well, and also for the 25th anniversary, which was like 30 years ago.
We sat down.
And it was an institution, the two of them, Suba and.
It was incredible. We sat down. I was with this guy from Trieste that was an opera singer with the Metropolitan Opera in New York. His name was, I don't remember his last name, but his first name was Attilio. They called him Uncle Attilio. They were really excited he was there. And they cooked an entire dorada for us that had been caught that morning. They cooked the whole fish for us, brought it to the table. It was about as big as the table. They cut the head off and served the head to Uncle Attilio because that's the
best part. That's the best part.
And he took his fork and stabbed the eyes.
Oh no, the
eyes out like this and slurped it like spaghetti noodles.
Oh my God! Well, the eye is a little tricky, but the cheek of the feet.
Yeah, and then he ate the eyes first.
Oh.
I have fainted.
What an experience you had! Yeah.
I
know better.
I didn't vomit in my plate, but when he ate the eyes, but I came pretty close. And again, we drank just, local white wine, but the food was, it's right on the Adriatic. It's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful setting, and the fish was so fresh. It was an amazing.
Don't tell me, because I had to go back for this weekend, but my favorite restaurant is not open yet because of the pandemic. So my favorite fish restaurant in Trieste, because Marinella is closed now, unfortunately. Suban is still there and will always be. I can tell you.
It was fantastic. The truffle kind of made it fantastic. But the next night we went to Harry's Bar in Venice, and my friend made a pass at Cipriani's wife, and we got thrown out.
Great.
Yeah. So that was a.
And where have you been in Montalcino? What restaurants? Do you have any special?
I've never been to Tuscany.
Collection?
I've never been to Tuscany. It's crazy.
No, I can't tell. No, really? Oh my
No.
God. You went to Trieste, you never came to Tuscany. It's incredible.
Well, my friend was from Trieste. His father was
Oh.
the chief of police.
Hmm.
And he actually stowed away on a freighter and jumped ship in New York when he was like 19 and got a job as a dishwasher. And then ended up owning two really, really fine restaurants in the United States. And as a result was kind of, really, really famous in Trieste because he was a local boy that had made, become very, very successful. It was a fun time. But Suban and Marinello, it's 40 years ago, and I just remember that like it was yesterday. That's so funny that your parents had their party there. So let's talk about the Madre.
The original one and the 25th anniversary.
Amazing.
And the lady was still there. I mean, the owner. Of course,
Wow.
I'm talking about like.
Well, next time you're at Suban or Marinello, please tell them that I love their restaurant. There's this guy in Minneapolis, St. Paul, who really loves their restaurant.
In the meantime, I pour the Brunello in my glass. I don't know if you did the same, but I have it because all this, talking about wine is talking about stories. So, and it invites me to have a sip,
Should we taste the Brunello next and the Madre third?
Yeah, I always do this sequence because, of course, the Brunello is still Sangiovese 100%, while Madre has 50% of Cabernet, and this is why it's always better to put it at the end, because Sangiovese is a little gentler, so the Cabernet is a little easier, so that's why it's always best to put it at the end of the tasting panel.
Okay, well, tell us about the 2013 Brunello, please.
So this is a classic case in which you find a vintage that is good, but it's not rated as the vintage of the century, where you can find a great, stable wine. The 2013 is showing how perfectly, it looked a little thinner at the beginning because it came, to the market after the 12 and right after kind of, the 2010 as well. But to me, this is a pure expression of the Sangiovese of Poggio Antico, a little cooler vintage compared to the 12, the 10th, or the 2015. But that's when you can have this elegance, and this, allow me the term drinkability, because it's very easy to indulge on the second and third and fourth glass, if not bottle, when you have this one. So you have it all. You have a great balance. You have, of course, the power of Sangiovese and, of Brunello, because it's not just a watery wine like in the past. It's a great wine, but at the same time, it matches even better with food, because in this case, it respects the Italian tradition of food and wine pairing, So food is sometimes a little bit more central, and the wine is the companion, or at least they have to be at the same level. If you have, a wine, and don't get me wrong, but some big cabs of California, it's a meal itself, it's not even, it's almost impossible to match it and to pair it correctly with some other food, even if you're having a bison steak, this Brunello is perfect. You can have it with a sandwich if you want, but you can have it, of course, with a classic meal, with a big steak, of course, al sangue, so the classic Tuscan way to cook it, and also, again, pasta with ragu or meat sauce, something like that, But I would even say, if you're a foreigner, even with the pizza, if you put something on it, it's a sort of universal wine, as I call it. It goes well with everything. And actually, I adapted a little bit about the pairing of your friend in the Amarone area, but sometimes here at the restaurant you also want to have some fish, and of course you want to have a Brunello. And I had some meals actually, fish and Brunello, 13 or 11, the vintages that were a little bit cooler compared to the big ones, and it was perfect. So of course, I rather go for a steak with the Brunello. That goes without saying. But even if you by hazard you try something different, you can do it. So I don't know. I never tried it with prawns, but I possibly could, and I think that it matches even better than the Amarone. The acidity, of course, helps a lot. Again, you can find practically all the aromas that you found in the Rosso di Montalcino, but with more complexity and more depth, of course, because now you also have those tobacco, sweet tobacco scents coming, together with some sweet plums, the California ones, just to give you the idea, that kind of red fruit scents, and it's a spicy as well. You can find some cloves or a little bit of pepper, white pepper, a little bit more delicate than the black pepper. And so on. We could carry on, saying all the kind of peppers because you can find them all. But I don't want to be, like those kind of guys that start saying,
Your website says
things. I think that you also have to drink the wine, of course, and always match it with some great meal. That's very important for what we are, as Italians. And sorry for drinking.
Website says it tastes like a goji berry, and I don't know what a goji. Number one, I don't know what a goji berry is, and number two, I don't know what a goji berry tastes like.
Neither, actually. So I was saying, I don't know. I was about to say, I have no idea.
But we had a conversation, one of these conversations with Daniel Ravier from Domaine Tempier, which is obviously a great winery in Provence, and he said that we had this conversation on Saturday. He said that his favorite wine in their cellar at that time, at that moment, was the 2012 Bandol Rouge, which 2012 is not a good vintage, was a very difficult vintage for them. And, they make these single vineyard wines, the Cabassau and Tortine and Miguel, that are, generally really much greater wines. And he said, but his favorite wine to drink at that time was this just Bandol Normal from a problematic vintage. And because it just was so delicious and tasted so great with food and was so versatile. On Monday, I recorded a conversation with the following Monday, 3 days later, I recorded a conversation like this with a great South African winemaker named Eben Sadi. And he was talking about how, not everything has to be the greatest vintage ever. That sometimes, everything doesn't have to be the vintage of the century. No. And I told him this about Daniel Ravier, saying the 2012 Bandol, regular Bandol, was his favorite wine in their cellar at that moment. And Evan said, I drank a bottle of 2012 Domaine Tempier Bandol Saturday night with dinner. He may have been drinking that bottle of wine while I was talking to Daniel Ravier about his wine.
Exactly. What a coincidence.
That's almost as big a coincidence as your parents having their dinner at Marinella.
Yeah.
So it's just, everything doesn't have to be the vintage of the century.
I totally agree, because first of all, you uncork the bottle easily, when it's not the vintage of the century, you don't have this fear, you just go there and you say, okay, I want a great wine. So I can open that bottle of Poggio Antico Brunello. I don't have to keep it there for, you know, my newborn child to be like graduated wherever at Yale or something. I just drink it now. And, you know, even if you don't have any special food, you can have it with whatever you want. That is another very important thing of the Italian wines in general, that they can easily match with all kind of cuisines, you know. So having the opportunity to travel a lot, I can match them with a lot of different food combinations, you know, from Asian foods, like, you know, Chinese, or according to the region, I mean, China, or even to, you know, a burger. I love having Brunello with a great hamburger, you know. It's fantastic. And the versatility of Italian wines in general is something that you do not easily find elsewhere. It's something very Italian, and I think that is due to the fact that for us, actually, wine has always been a complement, you know, a part of the meal experience itself. So, and you know, that's why I said you don't have the vintage of the century, but you have a great wine, and you can really have it with whatever you want. So you don't have to wait for a special occasion. The special occasion can be every day, you know. It's a sort of luxury that you can afford, if not every day, but a little bit more frequently than, you know, the great wine that you keep there in the cellar for you know, the very, very special moment of your life. And to me, these are the best experience, because anytime I wait for a long time, you know, to uncork a bottle, then, you know, I have to say that I regret the fact that I hadn't opened it a lot earlier, you know, because sometimes you wait, you put a lot of expectation, and it's a lot better, you know, to be surprised by this Brunello, which is a great producer, Poggio Antico, you know it, you visited it, that they say, yeah, the 2013, which is a great vintage. It's not the vintage of the century, it's great, and you just, you know, find it surprising. So sometimes it's a lot better to have like the 2012 Bandol rather than, you know, having I don't know, a Claude de Tournelle, whatever vintage you want to pick. You know, it's and why it's a lot of, you know, about stories, about memories, of course, and you know, it's the classic example. We've been talking for like an hour, and we've found so many coincidences, you know, even if we haven't met. And in the wine industry, it's very common. So that's why I like it so much. That's why I've been in this world for like 15, 16 years, and I don't want to change, of course. And you've been there for, like you said, 50.
So, you know, I'm old.
Before I was born.
I'm really old. You know, you mentioned fish with Brunello. There's a great French chef here named Daniel Boulud, and in New York. He's one of the great chefs in this country, and he became famous originally for a dish that he made with sea bass wrapped in very thinly sliced potatoes and sauteed until the fish was just done and the potatoes were crisp. And then he made a Barolo sauce, which he just reduced Barolo way down until it was thick, and served this fish on that sauce. And it was fabulous. You know, that dish, you could make that dish with Brunello instead of Barolo and serve it with this Brunello, and in a lighter vintage, not the 2015 or the 2016, but not lighter is the wrong word, but a less massive vintage like 2013, it would be absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, sometimes, you know, if you dare, you know, new combination, you can find incredible expressions, you know, of food.
You know, people ask me all the time, which of these two wines is better? And I generally say, you know, it's really not about that. They're different. They're just different. And one or the other may be better tonight based on what kind of mood you're in, what the temperature is outside, what kind of flowers are in the room, what you're having for dinner, what you're having dinner, whom you're having dinner with, what kind of toothpaste you brushed your teeth with this morning, what kind of deodorant you're using, what kind of cologne you're wearing. It all changes the wine. It's really not, it's just not about this wine is better than that wine. It's just not, it's more complicated than that.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It's more fun than that.
It's a living thing, you know. Wine is a living thing. It's not just, you know, and you know, it is also subject to the influence of the mood you're in or the place you are, you know, or the wine itself influences you back, you know. So sometimes you're not in a good mood and it puts you back in a great mood, you know. It's something unique. It's always been sort of magic thing, you know, because wine actually, even, you know, traditionally had always had this ability to age, actually. You know, now we have refrigerators, freezers and everything, but until 50, 60 years ago, it was not so. And you know, in ancient times, it was practically the only thing that was purest than water, because it was a lot safer to drink wine than water. And you know, it could even get better after you kept it there for a while, which was something that was impossible for other foods or drinks in general, you know, including water. So that's why that's the magic, the magic of wine, you know, and it's always been so. So yeah, there is no perfect wine or no better wine than another one. It's just the wine that you know. Talking about the sommelier time, there was an old pal of mine who was in the group of sommelier. You know, when we started, we were, you know, a lot focused on the correct pairings and, you know, doing this with that. And the only thing that he used to say is that, do you like it? So it means that the wine is good and the pairing is perfect. There is no secret at all.
But he should be pretty soon. Okay, we'll just write it out. Okay. I'm sorry I got interrupted. You know, could you, I missed that. Could you retell that? Because I missed what you said.
Oh yeah, sure. No, I just said, you know, back then in this sommelier team, and like 20 years ago, of course, we were, as you know, young sommelier, very focused on the perfect matching, you know, with all the technical sheets of food and wine and matching them. Also because it was part of the exam, you know, and this old pal of mine used to say, you don't have to, you know, be too focused on that. You just have to, you like it? Do you like it? So it means that the wine is good and the matching is perfect, you know. You want to have champagne and pizza? It's a great thing to do, of course. We did it a lot of time. It's perfect. You want to have mortadella with champagne as well? Fantastic, you know. Just with like a panini with mortadella, it's perfect. And so, you know, if you like it, it's perfect. But sometimes, as you said, and I totally agree, what you like tonight, you might not like tomorrow because of the fact that actually you're in a different mood, you're in a different place, the company is different. So there is no better wine, as you also said. The wine is always good, it just depends. Of course, technically there are wines that are better than the others, but you know, on average, even if you work in the industry, you don't always put too much attention on the technical part, you know. You also have to be overwhelmed by emotions, because that's what we're talking about here. I mean, it's very emotional, and this is why it's unique, you know. There is no other industry that has, you know, this kind of emotional part involved in it, and relationship with people around the world. So,
you know, I've been the sommelier at 2 dinners that were very challenging. Well, really challenging in terms of food and wine pairing. One of them was a 8-course dinner with Chateau de Kim with each course. I mean, what, you know, what do you, and with 67 and 59 and 45 Chateau de Kim, 21 Chateau de Kim. I mean, what, as a main course, what do you serve to pair with old Sauterne? That's not an easy assignment, but one of the first courses was a soft-boiled egg that we cut the top off the egg and just put some back then beluga caviar on top of this soft-boiled egg and served it. I think that was the 45 Chateau de Kim, and it, you know, it wasn't obvious. There was no obvious thing, but it was amazing. And I also was the sommelier at a dinner, again, 7 or 8 courses with Taylor Flaggate ports. And, you know, what do you serve with as a main course dish with old port? But we served rare bluefin tuna topped with a slice of fresh foie gras and a port sauce with the 1945 Taylor port. And it was absolutely a magnificent dish and a magnificent combination because, you know, at that age, the port wasn't all that sweet anymore. And it just, I mean, it was just fabulous. So it's so much more complicated than that. Anyway.
I think that the best matching I ever experienced in my life was, in that case, it was a two-star Michelin restaurant. And, you know, they had a special dish. Anytime I go to a Michelin restaurant, I just, you know, I don't focus too much on the matching and so on, but that pairing really got me, because it was sort of deconstructed and rebuilt or recomposed tomato, which is by definition quite, you know, difficult to match. So it was with 3 different consistencies, 3 different cooking techniques, and put together again in a shape of a tomato, actually. So it was something incredible, just, you know, because it looked like a tomato, but actually it was like an impossible dish to replicate, of course. And they served me, and of course the chef was a brother, and the sommelier was the other brother. So, you know, that is something incredible. So the kitchen and the table actually really went together because they were part of the family and always working together. And so we served a poured a Piero Pan 2008. It was 2 years ago. So an old Soave, which you would not expect to be still at this level. First of all, of course, it was the top one of their range. And the matching, really, if I remember it, because I don't pay a lot, I just pay attention, you know, to the atmosphere more than the ingredients, and because I have to come out of a restaurant happy, you know. If they make it happen, it means that the experience was great. But in this case, I really have to say that I remember both, you know, the culinary preparation and the matching, because it was the perfect matching, the best one I ever had.
Whose Suave was it?
Sorry, where it was?
Suave was it?
It was, it's called Bracali, which is in Massa Marittima, like still in Tuscany, 2-hour drive from here. Of course, it was my birthday. Oh, it was, yeah, a birthday lunch. I tend to go there, you know, when there's nobody around. So I look like a sheikh who, you know, reserved the whole restaurant. Because if you go on a Friday for a lunchtime, you don't find any other person around. So it's perfect. You got all the stuff for you, and it was a very, very unique experience. I really enjoyed it a lot.
Let's talk about the Madre, the 2015 Madre.
So 2015 is a great vintage, and I think that Madre, our Super Tuscany, is fantastic as well, because, you know, it's a blend, 50% Sangiovese and 50% Cabernet Sauvignon. We just have two little strips of Cabernet Sauvignon in Madre. So we're talking about not even 2 hectares. So a very small part of that vineyard is grown with Cabernet. And the rest of Sangiovese, of course, is again a Brunello declassed. So practically a Brunello to be that instead of becoming Brunello was used to be blended in this IGT, in this Super Tuscan. And this is a wine that all our American friends love because, of course, it reminds them of some Cabernets that they might have tasted. But you
Federico,
know,
can we pause for just a second, please?
Yep.
Sorry.
No problem. Shall I? No, it was what I was saying. Yeah. But you know, even if it's a blend and you have the Cabernet Sauvignon, but you still recognize the style, you know, it's still very Poggio Antico because you have this very important part of the Sangiovese that gives you this freshness, this acidity, you know, this bouquet, this floral bouquet. But you know, it is blended with the Cabernet, so it's a little rounder compared to, you know, Sangiovese itself, you know, and of course it's aged in tonneau, so the double barrique, you know, the 500-liter coopers, and this is why you have also this how could I say, it's not sugary, I mean, but you have the sweeter parts, of course, that are a little bit more predominant compared to the Brunellos and the roasted Montalcino that we tasted. So you got these two souls, you know, of the Cabernet Sauvignon and the Sangiovese that actually blends together at one. So even if it's a blend and you have an international varietal, you really recognize this Mediterranean Tuscan terroir and the altitude, of course, the elevation of the vineyard itself give you this elegance, even if it's Cabernet Sauvignon. So this one, that's why I always put it at the end, because it's a little bolder sometimes compared to some expression of Brunello, especially the 2013 or 11 or 9 and 8, 2008, 2009, were a little thinner, you know, compared to even to this one. So yeah, with this Madre, I would, yeah, first of all, it's a great opener. So you can even have a glass of this wine as an aperitif, you know. We Italians don't do that, but Americans do, you know. It's a wine where to start, you know, even sitting at the bar at the restaurant. And then again, it can go very well with a lot of, you know, even heavier food, you know. So if you're having a steak with some butter or, you know, mashed tomatoes or, you know, some other gravy things, you know, something with gravy, sauces like that, you know. What do you think? What would you match it with?
Well, this wine, I kind of, there's this dish that I make a lot. It's a Lydia Bastianich dish. She is a famous American Italian chef. She has an amazing restaurant in New York City.
She's from
Trieste. She's from Trieste. Yeah. And she has, well, then I don't need to explain to you who she is. Her son, Joe, and I are good friends, but she has this dish she calls beefsteak Maremma style, where she takes she says to use a porterhouse, 3 inches thick, and grill it, being sure to grill, you know, the fat, caramelize the fat in the ring around it first, and then grill it and turn it and grill it, and take it off when it's just slightly under medium rare or however well done you want it. Oh, the other thing, a really good little trick is that she says is to put it on the grill bone with the bone down,
No.
which the bone transmits heat into the meat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So you get a more even cooking across the entire steak because of the heat coming up through the bone, which is a really great trick. But then she makes a kind of a paste of olive oil, really good quality olive oil, salt, and fresh rosemary chopped up. And you grind it in a mortar and pestle, so it's kind of a paste of olive oil, rosemary, and salt. Take the steak off the grill, rub it with this paste, this olive oil, rosemary, salt paste, and just let it sit for 10 minutes. And then slice it. And it is the simplest dish ever. I mean, it couldn't possibly be more simple. And it is the best thing ever. And it would be the Cabernet and the Madre gives it that backbone and that tannin that, more tannin than would be just in a Sangiovese. And the fat in the steak. And so I think that I would say that is exactly the perfect dish for this wine.
Wow.
And since I've got a bottle open, I may have that for dinner.
For dinner here, kind of. Yeah. We're getting closer to dinner time, so you made me celebrate it a lot. Now I want something like that.
And they have those amazing cattle in Maremma, right? They're called Chiara or something.
Chianina,
yeah. And that she wants you to use those, but you have to go to Italy to get that. It doesn't exist here. But I've made that dish. I'm sure I've made that dish for friends 50 times, and every time they think I've done something really, really complicated and amazing because it's just so fabulous, and it requires nothing. I mean, it couldn't be a more simple dish. So it would be.
If I happen to come to the Twin Cities, I'm inviting myself to your table.
Well, when the world returns to normal and you can come here, we really hope you will. And be sure to stay over a day so that you can come to my house for dinner, and I'll fix that dish.
Fantastic. It's a deal.
Well, Federico, this has been so perfect and so fabulous, and what an amazing, some incredible coincidences, connections that we have that we didn't know before this. That's one of the things I love about this series of conversations, is that there's always some.
And you see, we had prepared all the pictures, to show, but then a technical problem didn't let us, show them. But we found some even more interesting things to talk about. So that's. Well,
I think everybody who's joining us tonight has been there anyway, so they know, they've seen the pictures.
Oh yeah, they know, they do.
So thank you so much. This has been just absolutely fantastic, and we love your wines. Continue to love your wines, and it's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for
making such wonderful wine.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.